Welcome back again, everybody. Almost finished with this course now. We've just got two more tasks to look at. So let's jump into this one here and stay focused for another session. You recently organised an all-day meeting for your company, which took place in a local hotel. In their feedback, participants at the meeting said that they liked the hotel, but they were unhappy about the food that was served for lunch. Write a letter to the manager of the hotel, and in your letter, say what the participants liked about the hotel, explain why they were unhappy about the food, and suggest what the manager should do to improve the food in the future. Okay, so usual process here. We're going to look at the keywords, and this is a bit of a longer task, so of course this will take a little bit more time. So we recently organised, again that recently could be quite crucial just to discuss the time that it was organised, this meeting, and it's an all-day meeting. These little details are going to be important for the content of the letter, and it's your company. Now when it says your company, that doesn't necessarily mean that you own the company. It could be the company that you work for. We can also use it in that way, your company, your place of work. So which took place in a local hotel. Okay. So we know we're talking about a hotel, and in their feedback, so this is quite crucial as well, we are talking about feedback here. This is going to be crucial for the purpose. Participants at the meeting said that they liked the hotel. Also notice here we're looking at the participants. This is not you writing, you're writing on behalf of other people. They liked the hotel, so there's some positive feedback here, but were unhappy about the food, and specifically the food that was served for lunch. So lots of little details that we should try to aim to reference throughout the course of the letter. We're writing a letter to the manager of the hotel, and in the letter we need to say what the participants liked about the hotel. So what was good about the hotel? Remember, it's about the participants, not our personal experience, but what we have read in their reports, in their feedback forms. Why they were unhappy about the food. So we've got some positives in terms of the hotel, but also negatives about the food. And then we should suggest what the manager should do to improve the food in the future. So how can the manager improve the catering experience for guests? Okay, so lots going on here. As always, we want to think about the general purpose of this letter. We know the tone is a formal letter because we're writing to a manager in a professional capacity. But what is the purpose of the letter? Again, similar to a previous letter, you may get the feeling that we're writing a complaint letter. That is not the case here. It is not like we've had personally a very bad experience and we're writing specifically to complain. Here, the participants of the meeting were all given feedback forms, and those participants reported in their feedback that they liked this about the hotel and they disliked this about the hotel, and we are now reporting back on those experiences. So we are providing feedback here, and it can be positive, it can be negative. In this case, it's a bit of both. It's also important to acknowledge that we're not providing feedback on behalf of ourselves only, but on behalf of other people. That's quite crucial to consider as well. You may, if you find that, if you think it would be helpful to include that in the purpose up here, then you can certainly do so. Okay, so we can then move into the plan, and we are going to, as usual with these letters, these formal letters, P2, P3, P4, the P1 will be for the purpose. And the first thing we want to do is talk about what the participants liked about the hotel. And what could we think about here? When we think about a meeting, we've got to specifically think about a meeting. Then maybe participants felt that the meeting area, wherever that might be, was nice. It looked nice. We could say that maybe it was well decorated, or that they enjoyed the facilities. So we'll just put down a couple of key words here: facilities, well decorated, and then some appropriate topic related vocabulary here. Conference rooms. So some hotels will specifically have conference rooms designed for this purpose, designed for businesses to run meetings inside of them. And then maybe we can think about the furniture as well. So maybe comfortable furniture, because again, it's a meeting, so you want your employees or your colleagues to be happy where they are. Okay. Then we want to think about why they were unhappy, and specifically this is unhappy about the food. So only the food, not about the hotel itself. So we could maybe, I don't know, lots of different things you could think about it here. Maybe we could think about the soup being too salty, and maybe the bread that was with it being stale. Again, this is the sort of vocabulary that the examiners are looking for here. They want language that expresses this sort of food-related vocabulary and complaints around it. Remember, it's not a complaint letter, but we are complaining about the food in a sense. And maybe there were not enough vegetarian options, so we can write that in as well here. So again, nice topic-related vocabulary, thinking about food. And then we need to say what the manager could do to improve the food. Well, we'll just refer back to the points we've made. They're quite simple things to fix. So less salt in the soup, maybe fresher bread, and more vegetarian options. So increase the vegetarian options. And of course, we'll want to paraphrase a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about that now, but we will need to think about that later. So there's our general plan here. So there's actually it's quite strong on detail, but I think we might need to fluff up the paragraphs a little bit to make sure they're long enough. And we'll do that as we go through, of course. So let's move into the first paragraph now. First of all, we've got to think about how we're going to open it. And I imagine that as we've organised this meeting, we probably have some experience with the manager of the hotel already. So let's go straight into a Mr. Bowman, as if we know, or at least we know the name of the manager of the hotel. And then we want to go the usual, I am writing to do what? And in fact, before you even go there, it's important because you're writing on behalf of a group of people, it can be better here to explain who you are straight away, in terms of your title, in terms of your connection to that group. So you don't say I am writing and my name is, it's I am writing as, and then who are you representing? So we can say here, as a project manager of whatever the name of the company is, the project manager of Traders Ltd. Ltd is just short form for limited company. And when I say short form, it's not informal, it's entirely okay to use here. Traders Limited 2. And then we go to talk about the purpose. A couple of other things to notice. Just a project manager, but not the project manager. Might be the project manager, but we imagine that maybe this company has multiple project managers. We are one of them, so we can use the article A here. Also notice the capitalizations on P, M, project manager. We're talking about our specific job role. This is our specific job title, and so we want to capitalize those nouns. I am writing as a project manager of Traders Limited to, purpose of the letter, as we have seen there, provide feedback on our, and we know it's recent, so our recent experience of your hotel. And not just your hotel, but when we think about the food, we can add its services as well. A little bit of paraphrasing already. We don't just want to say and its food. Its services is a little bit more all-encompassing. So recent experience of your hotel and its services. And then we can move into the first main paragraph where we're talking about what the participants liked about the hotel. And let's immediately open up with a bit of grammatical complexity. So we'll use a having, and then the past participle. In this case, it's just a verb that appears the same in the past simple. It doesn't have a different past simple to past participle, which is the scheduled, scheduled. But notice that that would be in the past participle. So if it is a different form, do keep that in mind. So having scheduled, and we can also use an adverb here, originally. So beforehand, having originally scheduled an all day. Now notice here, you're referencing back to the task itself, an all day meeting. Well, you could paraphrase that. You could say, having originally scheduled a meeting which was due to last all day. It's a little bit wordy, so I'm just going to keep this the same. Scheduled an all-day meeting in your hotel, as in Mr. Bowman's hotel, based on. Now we're basing on it again. We want to reference all of these key points based on its convenient location. And that allows us to reference the point about it being a local hotel. So we're covering everything here. It's very important. Okay, based on its convenient location. Now here comes the comma. So having done this, I then did this. So having originally done this, I am now pleased to report. This is some nice vocabulary specifically for feedback. If you're providing positive feedback, particularly on behalf of a group or other people, we can say, I am pleased to report. I am pleased to report that my team expressed satisfaction. Again, useful language for reporting on a positive experience, providing positive feedback with the facilities, as I've written in the plan there, with the facilities following this experience. Now notice I've got this here because this now links back with that first clause. We've talked about that there was this all-day meeting, and this comes after this, so following this experience I've just mentioned here. So we're improving coherence and cohesion through the language use there. So I'm pleased to report that my team expressed satisfaction with the facilities following this experience. Nice mix of grammatical structures here, nice mix of tenses. Now we've got to just be a little bit more detailed here. We're providing specific details, decoration, furniture, etc. So let's say in particular what they liked. So let's use that expression. In particular, comma, so in particular, they appreciated. So again, we're just showing a little bit more range in vocabulary. We've got expressed satisfaction, now we've got appreciated. They appreciated the nice adjectives, spacious, and now nice collocation here, tastefully decorated. So, elegant, smart decoration. Tastefully decorated conference rooms. So lots of nice topic-related vocabulary. So, as well as, they appreciated the spacious and tastefully decorated conference rooms, as well as the comfortable. Now notice it's not comfy, that would be too informal, just comfortable. Comfortable, and maybe another adjective here, ergonomic, so designed for comfort in terms of being efficient as well and not hurting your back, designed to be sat in for a long time and keep you pain-free. Comfortable, ergonomic chairs provided. Ergonomics is almost like the science of comfort, so we're being very specific here. Ergonomic chairs provided, okay? And notice here we've got this passive voice and we've omitted the which were, and you can do that. So we can just omit that there because that's already quite a long paragraph. And now we can move into the next paragraph. And we're talking here about why the participants of the meeting were unhappy with the food. And we've talked about this very positive paragraph. We're going to move on to a negative one. So there's this contrast. So hopefully you would already have in your mind that we could start like this. However, there are a couple of other ways, of course, you could start, but the main point here is that you want to immediately suggest some contrast. Makes it for a clear transition, makes for the reader will be prepared, and that's what we want for coherence and cohesion. Here's some very nice purpose-related vocabulary here, talking about providing feedback, providing negative feedback, I must unfortunately draw your attention to. And then what is the problem here? Remember, it's not our experience, so we're going to say the participants. Less positive response. This is a polite way of putting it. Really, we mean negative response, but less positive, it's that sort of polite form. Less positive response to your catering. So this is a nice way of talking about the food at the hotel, the catering. Notice the apostrophe usage in participants. We are using a possessive of a plural, and this is a plural noun which finishes with an S, so the apostrophe goes after the S, not before the S. Very important that you have that there. If you put the apostrophe before the S, participant becomes singular, and that's not what we want. Okay, so then we can move on to thinking specifically, like before, what are the specific issues that the participants had? Again, some nice vocabulary, according to our feedback forms. So we're imagining here that we've provided feedback forms for the staff, and this is how they filled in those forms. According to our feedback forms, according to our feedback forms, a number of our employees, it's just a little bit more sophisticated way of saying some employees, but it means the same thing, felt that, now here we can be bringing in those details, felt that the soup was too salty. And now soup will usually come with bread. The way that we can put that is, and the bread accompanying it, when I say it, I mean the soup, accompanying the soup, a little stale. Now notice what's happened here. We've actually omitted a bit of language as well. The soup was, I missed a letter there, as you can see. The soup was too salty, and the bread accompanying it a little stale. So we've actually dropped the was, the to be verb here. So, and the bread accompanying it was a little stale. We can do that in this case. So when the two nouns that we are referring to are very, very closely connected and we're joining them with the simple conjunction and, you can drop the to be verb if it's only, so if it's the same verb, if it's a to be verb that you need in both cases, you can actually drop that verb, and it's not informal. In this case, it's just efficient. So we're using it there, or we are choosing not to use it there. We are omitting it there. Okay, and then I think that's okay. We can drop that sentence there. So according to our feedback forms, a number of our employees felt that the soup was too salty and the bread accompanying it a little stale. Another reported, and again some nice vocabulary, source of disappointment. So nice feedback vocabulary was the, we've got vegetarian options here, so we use the noun shortage. And just finish that there. The shortage of vegetarian options. Yeah, and we can finish that there. Okay, then we can move into the final paragraph, which is for the suggestions of what the manager can do to improve the food. The first thing I want to put out here is that really it's only the food that was the problem. Because I want to mostly provide positive feedback here. So the way I can do that is by writing, with the exception of these catering issues. With the exceptions of these problems with the food, essentially. So these are the exception, but on the whole, our meeting was entirely successful. This is a nice way to open this paragraph, because then it transitions neatly into giving suggestions for improvements, because we're saying this is really the only thing you need to do to improve your guest's experience. So I can only recommend, again, this is the point I'm trying to make, is that if everything else is great, we're only recommending this one thing, that you advise your chefs to use less salt in their soup. Again, it's quite simple, but notice here the use of the verb advise and the grammar here. Look at the verb pattern. So you advise plus your object pronoun here plus to plus the verb in the infinitive. It's different to if you are using recommend, and you can see that just before. Now they're very similar verbs, but notice how I'm using recommend differently here. So with recommend, I'm using recommend plus that, and the that is actually optional. You don't necessarily need it, but then you follow with the object pronoun and then the verb in the infinitive. But notice that you do not use a to. It's not I recommend you to advise. It's I recommend you advise. I recommend you see a doctor. Notice the difference there. It doesn't make sense to say I recommend you to see a doctor, but it does make sense to say I advise you to see a doctor. So they're similar verbs, but with different verb patterns. So it's really important that you distinguish between the two there and you get each one correct in its verb pattern. Okay, anyway, let's finish this off here. You advise your chefs to use less salt in their soup. Serve fresher bread. Notice what I'm doing here is I'm creating a 3-part list with verbs now. We recommend that you advise, that you serve, we recommend you advise your chefs to use, to serve, and increase. So the advise follows on to use and serve and increase, and the increase relates to the range of vegetarian, and instead of options I'm going to go with dishes, like meals essentially. Now this is already quite long, so I don't see any need to, it's actually a little bit shorter than I thought, 165. Regardless, I don't see a need to add that final sentence, you know, I look forward to hearing back from you, because we're not looking forward to hearing back from the manager. We are not expecting to hear back from the manager. You might write something like, I hope that this feedback will be useful for you. I don't really find that necessary either. So we're just going to close it off with a yours, not what you think. Should it be faithfully? Should it be sincerely? Hopefully by this point in the course you know that it should be sincerely, because we have the name of the recipient there. And then we finish with our full name here. Turner. We don't need to put in any information about the company. We've already added it in that purpose sentence. That's very useful that we've done that there. And there we go. That's pretty much it. So here we have a clear, we have a well-written letter based on providing feedback with a mixture of positive and negative feedback on the topic of a hotel and of food. So there's a lot going on here, but we pretty much covered everything in the task requirements itself. If I have a quick scan, it's very useful sometimes to have a quick scan through the keywords there, just so you know you've covered everything. And if you haven't, you can quickly look back in. And I'm actually having a look now. And one word that we didn't really cover was the word lunch. So we can really quickly add that in. So it's useful to just draw your eyes over the keywords there, and we'll just simply put it here. Positive to response to your catering at lunch. And that's it. And then we've just made sure maybe the examiner wouldn't have taken much issue with not referring to that, but we want to just be on the safe side. Took 2 seconds, and then we're absolutely sure we've covered all of the task requirements, and we can go away happy. But I hope you found that useful. So there we go. That's our penultimate letter, looking at providing feedback with a formal tone. And I will see you in the next lecture, which is also the last lecture.